Chapter 18, Islamic State, is ISIS or Isil. The event would give America and its allies an excuse to invade Iraq and Afghanistan in order that they could construct pipelines through to the Caspian Sea and take over the Iraqi oil fields, and that Osama bin Laden would be blamed. This would lead to soldiers looking for non-existent enemies in caves in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and that there would be an endless war on terror where there is no real enemy and the whole thing is a gigantic hoax. Nicholas Rockefeller's words to Hollywood producer Aaron Russo. Mike Harris, an editor at the Veterans Today online journal, told Press TV in an interview that it is becoming obvious that the U.S. intelligence community is involved in funding ISIS if you look at the military support that ISIS receives. He commented after the Pentagon's admission that Isil terrorists captured a bundle of U.S. weapons airdropped in the Syrian border town of Kobani. He commented that there have been a number of anomalous things that ISIS has captured, a number of ground vehicles that were conveniently prepositioned. All of this gives me the implication that perhaps we have treasonous elements within our government. The implication is that the U.S. is creating terrorism around the world in order to justify military adventurism. Terrorists don't put themselves on the ground for free. It takes money to be able to arm them, to equip them, to get them trained, and they have to be paid. Where is this money coming from? According to some reports, ISIS terrorists were trained by the CIA in Jordan in 2012 in order to destabilize the Syrian government. So if Islamic State or ISIS or Isil, they seem to exist with many names within the controlled media, were created by the elite bankers or the US or British governments or both together. What is the purpose? I believe that the Islamic State, which could be named the Un-Islamic State, is a radical offshoot of Islam, with imposters serving the West throughout its organization and with those at the lowest levels unaware of the funding that is received at the highest levels from private banking and Western governments. This makes the fighters at the lowest levels on the battlefront expendable and fighting for a cause which they believe to be real because they have been manipulated by lies within the ranks, but it is not a true cause. The mission is to smear the religion of Islam and destabilize the Middle East and provide the excuse for the United States to intervene under the supposed threat of terrorism being a threat to the Western world. As a byproduct, the wealth and natural resources of the Middle East are taken by the West. There are multiple sources that tell us the Al-Qaeda was a creation of the CIA. Nabil Naim was a former Al-Qaeda commander and gave an interview stating that organizations of Islamic terror are in fact controlled by the CIA. He explained that the camps in Jordan where Islamic State was created, armed and trained, were supervised by U.S. Marines, and that the group's funding is all American, and that more than 1,000 of its so-called terrorists are being treated in hospitals in Tel Aviv. According to Jordanian officials, the U.S. trained ISIS at secret Jordanian bases, and that Saudi Arabia has also been arming ISIS as being a driving force in supporting the Al-Qaeda-linked group. Kurt Nimmo, writing for humanitarianfree.com, states that according to the late Saudi foreign minister, Prince Saud al-Faisal, ISIS was cobbled together in response to the Shia government in Iraq following the U.S. invasion of Iraq and the execution of Saddam Hussein. This information was taken from a Financial Times story and ignores the fact that the Saudis collaborated with the CIA and Pakistani intelligence to create the progenitor of ISIS, the Afghan Arabs that became Al-Qaeda. Nimmo commented that even though the Saudis may have funded and supported ISIS, they are not responsible for its creation. They were created by a Pentagon group led by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi that would become ISIS. In January 2006, Al-Qaeda in Iraq merged with other Sunni groups to form the Islamic State of Iraq. In 2013, the group moved into Syria and became ISIS. Former CIA contractor Stephen Kelly said in January 2015, in an interview with Press TV, that ISIS is a terrorist group which is a fabricated enemy and that they are funded by the United States. The funding is completely from the United States and its allies, and for people to think that this enemy is something that needs to be attacked in Syria or Iraq is a farce, because obviously this is something that we created, we control, and only now it has become inconvenient for us to attack this group as a legitimate enemy. FBI whistleblower Sybil Edmonds appeared on RT News, and she is a former FBI translator and founder of the National Security Whistleblowers Coalition, NSWBC. There is a video of her on YouTube entitled US Cultivated, Financed ISIS. FBI whistleblower Sybil Edmonds, and in it she points to the belief that ISIS is the creation of those that are calling them terrorists. In an interview with RT News in August 2014, Sami Ramadani commented on terrorist organizations by saying that you have to go back to the invasion and occupation of Iraq in 2003. Neither Syria nor Iraq had any terrorist organizations. Once the Syria crisis started in 2011, the US and Britain started funding and arming these groups. These terrorist organizations were created, used and abused by the Western powers, including Britain, so they can use the same organizations to re-invade the area, reoccupy it. They had a design to create a massive military base in Iraqi Kurdistan. That will obviously threaten Iran in the future and any government in Baghdad that might wish to have policies different from those of the US. The US and NATO are using the barbarity, savagery and threat of ISIS to strengthen their presence. He also commented that the US and NATO countries are using the threat of ISIL to re-intervene, to wage in the future new wars in the region, create new military bases, especially in Iraqi Kurdistan, to try and weaken any Baghdad central government, maybe even divide Iraq into 3 warring regions. In February 2015, an ISIS leader named Yusuf al-Salafi in Pakistan admitted that ISIS is being funded by the USA. This came from a statement from the Pakistani government that interrogated Yusuf. He revealed that he got funding, routed through America, to run the organization in Pakistan and recruit young people to fight in Syria. He confessed that he and another ally were getting paid by the United States to recruit youths to join ISIS for $600 a recruit. In October 2014, Alex Newman, writing for The New American, reported that Vice President to President Obama, Joe Biden, speaking at Harvard, admitted that the Obama administration's coalition partners in the supposed battle against Islamic State played a key role in building up the threat from the start. In May 2015, Jens Jerndahl, a spokesman for Swedish political party Unity, said that it is now well known that both Al-Qaeda and ISIS were created, funded, trained and armed by the CIA and other US security and military agencies themselves, in order to stir up violence that could then be used as excuses to intervene with military force towards covert political and financial ends, all according to objective international analysts, coinciding with highly credible sources within the US establishment itself. In November 2013, a Daily Telegraph article revealed that armies of al-Qaeda terrorists were using NATO member Turkey as a springboard for their invasion of neighboring Syria, proving that both NATO and the CIA were supporting al-Qaeda terrorists in Syria. Tony Cartaluxi wrote that terrorists carrying al-Qaeda banners into battle are passing CIA outposts, US, British and French special operation training camps and through Western-funded refugee camps on their way to commit a wide range of atrocities along and within Syria's borders. This defies all explanations except one: the war on terror is a fraud. and the very terrorists that thousands of Western troops have died chasing across the planet, have been armed, funded, trained, propped up by the West itself as a perpetual excuse to engage in global aggression, occupation and wars of immense profit in both terms of wealth and geopolitical power. In June 2013, Joe Wolverton, writing for The New American, commented that President Obama agreed a shipment of arms to al-Qaeda in Syria. He reported that in the letter sent to the White House by Senators John McCain, Carl Levin and 6 other senators, intelligence reports were mentioned from the French, British and Israeli governments that corroborated claims of nerve gas deployment by Assad's military. All this evidence points to one common denominator, and it means that there is a coalition between bankers, the US, British, French and Israeli governments and their respective intelligence agencies, a plan to support and fund the phony war on terror. This makes all the terrorist groups that the controlled media reports on, the private armies of both the Western-based Illuminati and Western governments. David Icke sums up the intelligence agencies nicely in The Perception Deception and believes that there is a constant connection between intelligence agencies and terrorism, and he says that the depth of depravity that controls the intelligence services in Britain, America and across the globe is beyond belief, and they have a policy of giving their Muslim targets the choice of working for them as informants or being falsely accused of terrorism. Throughout the world, the intelligence services are interweaved with terrorist organizations, and they created most of them. In August 2013, the Huffington Post reported on ex-HSBC employee, Everett Stern. He was an anti-money laundering officer with HSBC and lost his job with the bank and became blacklisted in the banking industry and sleeps with a gun beside him after receiving death threats. This is all because he exposed HSBC's continued action of laundering money for terrorist groups. In 2012, the bank paid a $1.90 billion penalty, and although they were supposed to have stopped, Stern claimed that HSBC was still laundering. Amazingly, when he told his supervisors, he was told to stop making waves and to keep clearing the quota of 72 alerts per week. He then took the evidence to the FBI, CIA and SEC, and his claims fell on deaf ears, the excuse being that prosecuting the too big to fail bank would precipitate a financial collapse. Finally, as we're talking about Islamic extremism, the Daily Mail in the UK reported recently that Islamic extremists are taking over UK prisons. Muslims make up just 1 in 20 Britons but 1 in 7 inmates. The Daily Mail revealed how fanatics are recruiting behind bars. The Ministry of Justice found that 12,255 Muslims in 2014 were behind bars in the UK, meaning that Muslims accounted for 15% of all inmates in 2014. So pressing is the problem that the British government was considering setting up jihadi jails that solely housed Islamist extremist terrorists. Gangs apparently run their wings in the UK prisons, meaning that other prisoners are left with difficult choices. Every new prisoner is targeted by the religious gangs and is told to join their brothers. They offer support and protection providing that the new prisoner prays 5 times a day and follow their version of Islam.